Okay, welcome back. We're actually a full warm August room here, which is nice. The regular question, who's here for the first time? Wow, that's fantastic. How many got your seat today? Not too bad. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, so for you who's here for the first time, we try to do this on a monthly basis. I wish we would have a bigger event room. We're working on it. And generally, the idea is just to talk about technology. We try to have some Google speakers and talk about the stuff that we're doing that's interesting, but at the same time, it's rather the topic and the speaker that's way more interesting than something that's necessarily product specific or something like that. So it's more of hanging out, talking to people, share experiences, mock accents if you want to, whatever gets you going. And luckily, we actually, for a while, we didn't really work together. We worked for the same person who gave us money,
right?
Which was good. But we didn't work against each other either, so it was decent. And also, I do get the questions about the Google office here in Stockholm. So we're about 160 people here. Half of them are engineers. The other half are back office for the engineers. And with the engineering, half of the engineering part is WebRTC, and the other half is working on Google Hangouts. So mostly, most of the back-end code is being written for Google Hangouts. Notifications for about 1 billion devices, etc., is being handled here. And I do have sort of one speaker lineup for working with testing for that as well over time. I mean, you're going to be fantastic, but and on the WebRTC part, we have one audio team, one video team, one integration team. And integration works with getting WebRTC into Chrome, Hangouts, other products. But they also write libraries that are being used by basically all platforms. If you use Facebook Messenger on iOS, it's going to be code that's being written here, and Snapchat, etc., which is the upside of open standards. You can build something that someone else actually gains something from. So tonight, and if you sort of feel the will to go away, I don't know why you would, but if you feel the need to go, if you go out here, you have toilets on your right, you have life raft on your left, and if you go straight out, it's just a button that you can get through the door and outside. We also have, for people to stick around, a very small gift.
Yeah, we need to bribe you to stick around.
Yeah, I need to give them some incentive. Why would I do it?
But only if you stick around, right?
Yeah, and I think for me, Mr. Once was a developer, but now I just talk. And I used to write JavaScript libraries, and I had this one JavaScript thing that got 1 million downloads, and I was really happy about it, and that was amazing. And of course, it becomes uninteresting after about 2 months because when people find another small JavaScript thing. But I was on the top, and he was lonely. But then you talk to Daniel, and you see how many people he has affected with the things he has done. So I'm sort of crawling back into my shell again, which means I'll shut up. I'll let Daniel talk about how amazing he is, and then we'll do some questions. It'll be about 45 minutes.
Yeah, I guess so. It depends. I mean, it depends on if you have questions, if we get discussions, whatever. I'll try to keep it like 45 minutes.
Yeah. But I mean, you could talk for a while.
I can talk forever.
Yeah. So, yeah. We also have the issue of the recompiled kernel that might throw things off.
Right. It seems to work now.
Yeah, it's the first computer after my summer holiday. I know how nothing this works, and you come up with this. So welcome, have a good time, and Daniel.
Thanks. Hey. So I'll talk about Carl. So I wanted to present to you with some sort of agenda, but I'll just stick to this. That I'm going to talk a little bit about an open source project that I maintain and I work with basically every day since a long time. So I'm going to start like this. This is me. I work for Mozilla. As Robert said, I worked together with him for a short while. I do networking in general. I work with Firefox networking, all those funny protocols, networking protocols. I work a little bit within the IETF, especially in the HTTP working group. And I do curl part-time too. That's basically what I do. I do actually quite a lot of other network-related open source projects too, but they're sort of smaller in comparison. And as I said, do ask if there's anything, comments, questions, whatever, ask. I think it'll be a better presentation and better discussion and more fun if you just pop up your question once you have them. So to start this off, curl is a project. We do two things in the project. We do a command line tool named curl, and we do a library called libcurl. And the library is then the same functionality done basically, transfers data back and forth, up or down, using popular internet protocols. That's just basically to get everyone on board. I realize that some of you know a lot about this, some of you know less, so I'll try to start from the beginning. This is an open source project. Everything starts at some point in time. This project started like other projects. We didn't have anything really from the beginning, but there was, of course, a lot of building blocks. There always was, since the beginning of time, basically. So we had a lot of building blocks. We didn't have any curl. But one day in 1996, actually, when there was a movie premiere for the Independence Day, I was writing an IRC bot at the time, and I wanted to get some currency rates in my IRC channel while we were chatting. What is $7 in Swedish crowns with an accurate currency rate? So I needed a little tool to just get currency rates off the web. I found one, actually, called HTTP GET. It wasn't really what I wanted, so I had to tweak it a little bit. That was fine. And then another day, I found I wanted to have more currencies, so I found another site on Gopher. Fine protocol. So I added Gopher support too. So HTTP GET became URL GET, so that it could speak HTTP and Gopher. Fine. And then someone invented currency rates over FTP, so I added that too. And then suddenly, one day, I had users who wanted to upload stuff to FTP. So I added uploading too. So then we had a lot of protocols, and I could do upload too. So URL GET was a stupid name because it couldn't only get, it could actually send stuff. So I renamed it. It became curl 1998. That was the first curl release we did. It could transfer these protocols up and down. Things were fine. Time passed. This is number lines of code over time. Is actually, I think it's number of lines, number of comments, and number of white space or whatever. Openhub.com. So, as you can see, everything was fine, and then a kind of linear growth over time, kind of. The big dip. Well, I think there are actually, you can see more, there's another spike towards the end too. The big dip is I think I remade the test infrastructure, kind of removed a lot of files and changed the infrastructure sort of. So just removed a lot of craft and made it differently. and similarly, the big spike at the end is also kind of a conversion of data into another format, which made it larger.
Did you have a remote support for
Yeah, but I don't think it's visible in this. At some point in time, like here, I removed Gopher support, actually. But it took a few years, and then people started to complain that it didn't support Gopher, so we brought it back. Because, I mean, where would we be without Gopher, right? So, we support a lot of stuff today. We support all these protocols and a lot of features, and basically everything, application level, internet transfers, we can do it. And we do more every day. It never stops. So basically today we have all this, and we have, like I used to say that we have 1 billion users. And what are 1 billion users? I don't know. Who knows? This is an open source project. We get our stuff downloaded at a fairly high rate from the website, but I don't know who's using it, right? I can count, I can go to sites. Some people tell me that they're using it. Others don't. I do estimates. I know that there's a bunch of users. I'll go back to a bit more details. Like these companies are all using curl and libcurl. That's a hell of a lot of companies. And if you just pick up some of the more well-known brands, these are the ones that I've found that are more well-known. And all these use curl in some way. And I also could just mention that basically none of these are, they don't tell me that they're using curl. Nobody is saying, hey, I'm using it, add my name to the list. This is more like me being bored during late nights and Googling the web for traces of users.
Not Mozilla?
Well, they didn't fit my list here. These are actually bigger companies than Mozilla, I would say. But Mozilla is using curl quite a lot, actually, as a sub-component.
It's embedded electronics.
Sorry?
Embedded in electronics.
Curl is embedded a lot. And I'll just get to this when I mention what are people using this for. Then, I mean, that was a lot of companies, most of them. I can add many companies, but yeah, I'll forget that. But yeah, I was going to mention that most of these companies, they never tell me. I find these. I think I found the curl license in my TV when I bought a new TV. Like I had no idea. Or I just Google it or find license files or instructions. I sometimes get questions from people who find my email address in the About box. It's some software, and then they ask me questions. I got the question the other day. Hello, I have a Toyota Corolla. How do I use the GPS? Good question. So it turned out that they have libcurl embedded then in the infotainment system in some GPS, or I don't know. I have no idea. Usually I don't answer those questions because that's kind of a big hole to waste time. And if they asked me, I mean, they probably tried everything until that point. And so it's default tool and library in Mac OS X, and it's basically in all TVs, at least in all the high-end TVs that are internet enabled. But I guess all of them are today, and they're all the major brands, and it is present in all iPhones and iPads. And I know that because it's mentioned in the About screen thing. In a lot of other phones too. It's not in the default Android build, so it's not in a regular Android phone. It is on all Samsung Android phones, but not the general Google one. It is, of course, very common in Linux, and it is present in a lot of games. I'm not sure exactly why, because games are more platform-specific. They could use other ways, but I don't know. I just find my license in a lot of games and all sorts of stuff. A lot of cars. As I mentioned, the infotainment system. So I find my license in a lot of Bosch and BMW and Mercedes and all sorts of manuals with licenses. PHP is the default transfer thing for PHP. So PHP sites, that's like a quarter of all sites on the internet. Set-top boxes and everything like this. That's a Firefox crash reporter. And of course, those tiny sites like Facebook and Yahoo are using it. So all taken together, then that, of course, there are a lot of users. Basically, every other device or many devices are using it for something. But of course, then why? Why would they use curl? Why wouldn't they use something else? First, it is easy to consider to write your own implementation for all these protocols, because they're protocols, they have the written specs. They've been around forever. You could just read the spec, implement it in whatever language you want, and it should be easy, right? It should just be there. It should just work. Why wouldn't I do it myself? But it takes a lot of time. It takes sweat and tears and patience to iron out all those wrinkles, all those bad sites, all those workarounds and weird things that never was really documented. But that's more like actually how it works in reality. And of course, it's open source, so everything major has to be open source, right? And it's MIT licensed, which means you don't really need to do anything. You just use it. You don't have to contribute back anything, which has helped to gain a lot of ground at more conservative companies who feel like more copyleft-oriented licenses are scary. We have a very simple and primarily a very stable API. We don't change the API. It's the same thing. We don't ever break it. So it has been the same thing since a very long time. And it's yet very powerful. You can basically do all sorts of very funny things with these protocols. I also think it of course has a lot to do with timing. We provided a library at the perfect timing, at the first time when libwww was the primary HLP library. And if any one of you have ever tried libwww, you know that it's a complicated mess in comparison, at least. Yeah.
When you say we, are there more than you are working on this?
There are a couple of more. Yes, there are many more. I'll get to that. Yes, it's a C library then. Of course, in this day and age, nobody's using C. Apart from me, then. I'm stuck there in the good old trusty C corner. So yeah, I think that's also another explanation why it's really big, because we can get it on all these weird tiny devices, all those RTOSs or different operating systems. We're on everything. Everything that's 32-bit, roughly POSIX-like, you can run curl on it. So you can use it on the small devices, big devices. It doesn't matter. We're there. And we have bindings, so there are adaptions for languages. I would say that we have bindings for every language anyone can ever think of. At least I can't even remember that many languages. It's like 45 or 52 or everything. And that helps, of course, because if you're into a language, you can always use the libcurl flavor if you want to. Yeah, it's pretty good. So why wouldn't I say that? You can also kind of disable a lot of parts from it. You can actually make it fairly small. I say fairly. I shouldn't say it's extremely, because it's still, you can get it down to, I think, 100K on a modern CPU, which isn't very, very tiny, but it's small with current standards. And we support 11 different TLS libraries. I'm proud of that. Nobody can beat me to that. It's a big effort to maintain that. Which I think is the best. Speaking of TLS, I can certainly tell you which is the one that people are using and is the most popular, and that's the OpenSSL one. It has like 95% of my users are using the OpenSSL backend, so it's quite clear that they are the big winner. But we all knew that, so that's not a surprise, really. And then, of course, you can pretty much divide the TLS libraries in different sections. There are at least 3 that are kind of the primary ones. OpenSSL and their forks, LibreSSL and BoringSSL, they're pretty much equivalent. And then there's GNU TLS, which is also very capable, and there's NSS. All those 3 are really, they do everything. They know all TLS details. They can do everything, and they're good. And then there's a whole section of tiny ones, and they have kind of sort of stripped out functionality for being small, like Embed TLS, AX TLS, and Wolf SSL. So they're more made for dedicated purpose small devices. And then we have a whole slew of these platform-specific libraries, since like Mac OS has its own, Windows has its own, and OS 400 has its own. That's a great OS, right? So, a lot of reasons. So, taking all this into account, of course, yeah, small devices still like C. I wanted to just get to this point, like, what is success? When I would say that, I mean, of course, I'm happy that we reached this point, that I have a lot of users, but I also like to remind people that it doesn't really matter, right? It's all open source. Nobody of these companies, I mean, none, pay me anything for this. I mean, I'm employed by a company who actually pays me to do this part-time, so I get some amount of money, but they're not paying for using this. So what is success here? It doesn't really matter if I get twice the users tomorrow, or half, or fraction. So the question is then, is success important here? I mean, of course, for me personally, I get an ego boost. I'm here, right? I wouldn't be here if I had 100 users. No, you wouldn't care. Maybe you don't care now either, but I'm here anyway. so yeah, it is important, and it's important, I think, for the project, for us who works with this. We like when people like it, of course. We want to do it because if nobody said they'd use it, then we wouldn't care. It wouldn't have been any fun. I would have boring during my evenings. But now that part is important, and of course, whose success? I would say that the users of our code, they're probably more successful than we are at times. Since, we don't get any money for this, we just get the joy of making it. I just wanted to inject this, because in open source, if we don't get paid for the product, success isn't the same thing. And there's a blank page. Great, right?
Yeah, that's it.
That's success, right? That's a billboard outside Silicon Valley. This is a company making an ad for it's a job site, right? You go there to seek your next job. So they had this huge ad. Great, I think. This command line, it makes no sense. Like, if you know anything about, well, what are they talking about? That's completely nonsensical, but it doesn't matter to me, right? Billboard in Silicon Valley. Don't tell my boss. So actually, the guy who was behind it, he contacted me afterwards. I was a bit embarrassed. So
Is that a Volvo on the program? Yeah.
I think so. I didn't take the photo. It was a friend of mine who was there, so I don't know exactly how.
Looks like a Volvo.
It looks like a Volvo. Of course. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the picture, right? Why would I have that? No, it's such a low resolution picture. I had to kind of add some, keep it for this nature. So, and here's another fun picture. Here's the NASDAQ building in New York. And it's actually a curl command line there on the big screen. It's a bit, I didn't take this photo either, so I wasn't there. It's actually some kind of ad for a company making some API thing. So this is actually how to order a T-shirt from them. And I know that I have a friend that actually tried this command line, and it worked, so he got a T-shirt. I got this, but and then right, and here's the iPhone credit screen that says it's a curl license. And of course, this is the only way I can impress on my kids, since this is the ending sequence in Grand Theft Auto 5. Dad is making games, right? It's actually a very long ending sequence. This is I'm not kidding you, this is 45 minutes into the ending sequence. Yeah, I didn't watch this either. So someone told me, your name is in 44 minutes. It's crazy. But I had to take the screenshot, and now I'm satisfied. So, right, and now I'm just going to tell you a little bit how are we doing this then? We have this project, curl, where we do these products. Curl and libcurl, we only make those. We don't do the language bindings. We don't do any applications otherwise. And we don't ever even make any binary packages. We just produce source code. We put it together in a tarball and release it to the world, and then everyone else can go and have fun with it. So all those companies, all those Linux distros, all those others, they do what they want to do, and they put it out, and everyone is happy, perhaps, or they come yelling at us. So we're transferring data back and forth. It's quite simple, actually, when you say, like, just HTTP or FTP or whatever. We have these stable products, or I would say stable APIs, and they're stable in general. You can rely on them. It's actually quite fun, but we do get bug reports on like 10 or 12-year-old products quite regularly. That is kind of fun because, woo, we made something that actually worked for 12 years. But also some kind of, you're coming now to ask us about 12 years, 10 years, 8 years, it doesn't matter. When you're a small open source project, it's really, really hard to maintain anything that isn't the latest, you know. I don't think we're going to spend any time to dig on that problem. Just upgrade and you'll be fine. Right, I mentioned that already. So here's the curl team. I'm in it now. So who's making all this then? The contributors of the project. We're about 1,300 in total. Of course, that doesn't say anything because I'm kind of counting everything that anyone helps out with. I'm actually making a really big effort to make sure that anyone, if you contribute a spelling mistake tomorrow, you'll be in the list too. So a few spelling mistakes, a few really, really old timers that has been around for a decade. But yeah, it adds up to a lot of people. Of course, we've been around for a very long time too. So of course, 1,300 over 17 years. Anyway, so we're like 30, 40 people that actually add anything, do anything, contribute anything per release. We do releases every 8 weeks on the clock, every Wednesday, every 8 weeks. So it's 30 to 40 people every 8 weeks. Usually then, of course, there are like 5 or 8 people that are the same every release, but otherwise. It is increasing then because we're a small team here. We're just like, I think I actually checked the number of commits, you know, if you didn't make a top list, the most committers in the project over time. At number 18, his last commit was 2003. So it's like, yeah, that's 12 years ago and he's still 18, which says something about the small size. So we're like 7-ish that actually stick around and do things regularly. I mean, like every week or every day or something like that. We're all volunteers in the meaning that we don't have any company backing up any significant part of this. There's nobody telling us what to do. There's no grander vision here. Nobody's saying anything. I get to do this part-time for my company. I bet some of the others get some allowance too to do things. I mean, all these, I mentioned all these companies before, and many of those, I mean, they have hired staff to work on their stuff, of course, and they're using libcurl, and they find bugs. They, of course, spend time to fix that. But all of those do that on paid time. But, I mean, that's just many, many different parts. Nobody's doing this professionally on the greater scale. So, yeah, we're open source. Everything is in the public. We don't have any secrets. We don't have anything hidden. Everything we do is public mailing lists, public chats, public whatever, public Git, public. We publish everything. And right, we're on GitHub. I think we're about 5, as I said, the core team basically that actually push anything. So we have a slightly distributed. I don't do all the pushes myself, but it's not that. I mean, it's still a small project. It's still small by amount of code too. We're like, I think including all test cases and all documentation, we're at the scale of 250K lines, which is really small, actually. So it's more, the actual library is more like 140K lines of code or something. So it's not that much. We have commits in the order of 250 per month or something. Quite decent, easy to keep up with. Small and nice. We do a lot of mail. We're mailing list oriented. We're this sort of old style. I mean, 1998 was our first release, and I already started 2 years before that. So we do everything mailing list style, like we did it in the old days. A lot of mails. So, and I like this guy, so I had to include him in the slide because that's a lovely picture. So, yeah, he's a sort of an evil guy somehow. You can tell it. So I wanted to mention that. So if I have 1 billion users or whatever, 2 billion, 500,000, I don't know, but on a lot of devices, and a This slide might grow out of date now because people will start to forget what Heartbleed was, but that was that major OpenSSL problem that turned out to exist in everything in the entire world, and suddenly everyone had this major flaw everywhere. I mean, then theoretically, we could just do the same thing, right? Curl in all devices. Why don't we expose anything like Heartbleed, and suddenly everyone will be upset? And yeah, that might still happen. But of course, we're making a good effort to make sure that it doesn't happen. And we do that, of course, by just the traditional things with testing and reviewing and whatever. But of course, in the end, nobody can be sure. And of course, we don't have any magic when it comes to suing for patents and stuff like that. And I know that especially in when you go up in enterprise sort of style applications, people will sue each other for this. And they are suing each other for things that curl does actually in areas of the world where they like to sue each other. So it happens. But I mean, we can't do anything about it. And it's stupid and silly. But so, and I would say that individual contributors to the project, then we're not more in any risk than anyone else. I wanted to mention a little about who owns this and the license and stuff like that. And since I know this is an area with sort of not interesting to anyone, I brought a cat in because cats are always kind of, on topic. And this is a special kind of cat too, because it's an American curl. The race is actually called that. It's supposedly to be because of the, you can recognize the ears. They're supposed to be curly somehow. So anyway, I own most of the copyrights of curl, and if you do a lot of stuff, if you want to add something major, you can have your own copyright on that part. That's fine. We don't care. We kind of assume we have if you contribute anything, you're supposed to read how to contribute, and you're supposed to be okay with that, and you're supposed to have the rights to contribute your code or whatever you're contributing. We have kind of low margin, or I would say low barrier here. No complicated bureaucracy. Just you say you have the right to donate whatever you're donating to us. Go ahead, and we're of course keeping track of who's donating what. But that's the way we do it. The license, it hasn't been a discussion topic for a while, but it's there. It won't change. It's there forever. It's MIT, as I mentioned before. It's really, really simple. It's really, really liberal. You can do whatever you want, except claiming that you wrote it, basically. It says you have to mention it in some documentation, but that basically means nothing, and the people are generally not that caring about it. They don't care. They just use it anyway. And I mean, what are we supposed to do when they break the license? Oh, you didn't mention that you're using curl. You didn't mention it in your documentation. You big company far, far away. I mean, I have nothing to do about that. It doesn't matter either. So. We don't have any trademarks. And of course, back to those legalese things. There's an American company that traded the word curl for a computer program. Oh, that's a programming language. They actually filed their trademark after my first release. So I don't really know how it works. They never bothered. They actually emailed me once and asked me sort of, what are we going to do about this naming issue? And I responded, and I never heard back. So I don't know. I don't care. They still exist. Curl.com still exists. They seem to be a thriving company. I don't know. If you Google for curl, I think my curl is the one that actually tends to be on top. At least for me. Yeah, we're all contributing by free will. Everyone is just doing what they want. All fine and done, right? Someone pays all this. Someone actually pays for time and infrastructure and everything. So we're all, I would say, as I mentioned before, then spare time hackers. We're all mostly people doing this because we think it's fun. I do it on my spare time quite a lot of spare time. I think it's fun. That's why I do it. It doesn't matter who pays. I have a company that pays for the infrastructure. I'm employed by a company that pays for some time. But most of us, we're just contributing here because it's fun, and we want to fix that little problem or add this little feature, and it moves along. As I mentioned, then we have a lot of contributors from companies. Company A are using libcurl. They're transferring stuff. They have customers. Something breaks. They get worried. We want to fix this. And I tell them, yeah, please do. Send us the patch. And that works really good. We get a lot of fixes like that. We get a lot of these once-in-a-lifetime patch. So I mentioned 1,300 contributors. I bet you that 1,200 of them just mentioned something once and never again. So we have a lot of those, but they're fine as long as we just review them and see that, oh, that seems like a great fix. You replaced 2 letters or whatever. Fine, get it. I've done a bunch of these. I add features because companies want them. Please do that. Can you contribute that back to the main branch? That's been working out really good. And that's in an open source project. Of course, those in the open source project that are in the best position to actually get stuff merged back into the master branch, that tends to be some of the members in the core team that are actually kind of in control or have anything to say. So in curl, they've come to me and said, oh, can we please pay you a lot of money to incorporate a new protocol, perhaps like SFTP or whatever. I did SFTP and SCP like that. And I said, sure, that seems to go perfectly fine with our kind of what we're here for, what curl is doing. And yeah, why not? A lot of users would be happy for that. So of course, I did it. I got to spend a lot of time, got code added. So I've done that sort of stuff a couple of times over the years. That's pretty good. I've also been sort of in the fortunate position that I've never actually got any really, really crazy suggestions. It could have been just, can you please add something really insane that I would really object to? But it hasn't happened. So they're all been in line with what I've thought that curl should do and could do and would do. But it's still, companies like this, when they're using open source, they only pay for new features. They don't pay for, can you please maintain this for a couple of years and fix bugs during that time? Nope. Or can you just hang around on the mailing list and answer questions every night? Nope. So, a big scary picture of me. So, that's kind of the project. We're a team, we're making all this, and I just wanted to kind of throw in a little bit about what this means for me personally, what I do here, or in the project or whatever. So I started this. I sort of lead this kind of herd all the cats. I answer questions. This is really my primary hobby. As we all have hobbies, we all spend time doing things we like. We socialize with friends and family. We do things we like because we think it's fun. This is fun. So I work on curl like roughly 2 hours a day. At like 10, 11 in the night, I start my curl session and I shut it down when I'm done, like 1 a.m. or so. Every day, every week, always. That's sort of my routine. Works perfectly. When the rest of the family is asleep, the house is dark and silent. So it builds up sort of when you're doing that, like, you know, day after day after day after day. And I was lucky to get employed by Mozilla in 2014. So now I'm actually getting to do this part-time, which then means that I actually spend more time on curl now, since I keep having my spare time hours. So can add extra hours during non-spare time, which creates this crazy mix of what do you do actually. Work time, spare time. Well, it's fun. Right. So if you add that up, it becomes a lot of hours and a lot of emails and a lot of commits just over time. But it's fun. I'm just saying that, of course, I mean, if you spend a lot of time, if you spend a lot of efforts, it becomes something in the end. Hopefully. could do. So I do this because I just enjoy it. I mean, I don't have any other explanation. I think it's fun. It was fun from the beginning. I've always liked programming. I always liked developing. It's still fun. I still spend this time. And it's as what I mentioned about success. It makes me just happy that a lot of people are using it. So of course I get a boost by knowing that people are using it. So I want to help them use it even better. I want to fix the problems. Oh, I did something wrong. I want to fix that. That's kind of what I strive. So yeah, we all need to. This is what I like to do. This is fun. Basically, the most fun I can imagine, and people then tend to kind of ask me like, right, yeah, but after 18 years, right? Isn't it ever done? How long are you going to do this? But really, as you saw on those lines of codes, the diagram I showed you, the graph, it just never ends. There's no slowdown in sight. Looking ahead, it never gets done. And as you all know, nothing ever gets done. If you're just into it, it never gets done. You get more people involved. There are more problems. There are more things to add. And on things on the internet today, they're hardly just slowing down. There's no stop to new inventions. There's no stop to new protocols or doing things new ways or trying out things or experimenting. Or no. We're basically doing the other way around. We're going faster these days. Protocols keep evolving. I mean, I did HTTP 1996 the first time, right? So this year we did HTTP 2, a completely new protocol, basically from a wire angle anyway. So yeah, things are happening all the time, and HTTP 2 is just one little thing that are changing. There are a lot of more changes coming in the process and so on. So we have work ahead of us too. And of course, we have all these adding things. We get new bugs and everything. Not to mention that maintaining this vehicle is a lot more than just code. So I mean, I would say that the greater part of my time is spent on answering emails or just making sure that others can keep up. I actually don't do a lot of new development during my 2 hours every evening. So right, yeah, the protocols they will keep evolving.
Are you taking part in the specification of new protocols like this?
I am taking part of new in the development of new protocols, especially HTTP 2. I've been involved in the IETF and the HTTP group since I don't know, 5-6 years ago. So I've been part of the HTTP 2 specification group since the beginning. So yeah, I've supported HTTP 2 since almost the beginning. So yeah, and it's also, I would say that is also something that makes it extra fun being part of something from the beginning, because then you can be part of the experimental phase. You can actually bring something to the table. We can play around with this and try stuff out. So I like being there early on so that we can use this as a tool just to exercise things. Try the new server, try this, try that. Oh, it didn't work. So yeah, we were part of HTTP 2 very early on. So we kind of put code in, ripped code out, put it in, ripped it out a couple of times just because the protocol has evolved during the standardization phase. And I like that. And I'm going to, HTTP 2 is by no means the end of anything. It's more like the beginning of something that's going to be even more. So I think we're just going to see more special purpose protocols.
What would you say is the biggest flaw, problem, or limitation with code today?
The biggest limitation?
Yeah, something that you wish you could fix or isn't fixable.
The biggest limitation that's holding the project back is probably just that we're too few people doing stuff, I would say, because we would be able to do so much more if we were just more people doing more of the things that we can do. So I would say that is actually, I think that's kind of the boring thing. If it would be a technical thing that is holding us back, I would say that one challenge we have when developing new things is that we have an API or kind of a paradigms and ways of working that makes you have to kind of cram things into the way we have developed things from the beginning, since we want to keep old stuff working, which is a benefit for all the old applications. If you wrote an application back in 2006, you can use that code and you can just use the latest libcurl and they'll just work. It'll just be the same thing. And that's something we make an effort to make sure that it actually works like that. But it also kind of makes a burden, because it's easier. It would have been easier technically to just make some cut-off dates and say, no, we won't support any stuff from that point in time. So there are more, and I would say that we have some other inheritance from the old days that we maybe should have gotten rid of 10 years ago, that would have made things simpler, kind of architecturally. But I don't think we have any, there are no big obstacles, technical ones, that stands in the way. Just time and code and imagination. So, since it's open source too, it'll survive. It doesn't matter if I grow bored of this tomorrow. The code is still there, still being maintained. So it doesn't matter. It'll have a future. It doesn't matter what I do or what I think. Actually, since it's open source, it's going to be there. It's going to live on. Maybe not the way I think it, but since it's still open source, it's still there. And there's really no slowdown. I've done some math or calculations on, I show you this linear graph of the growth in number of lines of code. That seems, to me, illogical. How can anything just grow like that over time? I mean, that was 15 years in that graph. And the number of contributions then, how will that differ over time? But it seems that we have a slight increase in contributions. We have a slight increase in bug fixes over time. So we're only doing things faster these days. More code, more contributions, more bug fixes, and more features. It's sort of insane. So no, there's no slowdown. It's just going to be more, like everything in software and internet today. It's just going to be faster going forward. Right, you can help. We can all help. That's what I wanted to say. I'm sure there are some questions.
How's the test setup?
The test setup is it's a homegrown thing. So we have a whole bunch of test servers that we run locally and actually just control from just the script that tells the server how to behave, and basically we run it. And we have a lot of unit tests too. I would say that as anything working on the internet, as I was kind of referring to when talking about the protocols of the internet, testing stuff is really hard because it's very easy to test something in the test suite locally. Yeah, that's fine, but that's on one target, like on one TCP stack, one test server. It's a completely different thing when you run it on a really weird custom operating system somewhere in a different architecture. So testing is like like anything that grows to the scale of using really, really large amounts of users and architectures and everything. We really have to rely quite a lot on users to actually report stuff, what they're seeing, and kind of react rather than have everything working exactly from the beginning. Unfortunately. And of course, we can then, once we fix problems, we can bring them back and we can kind of tweak the test infrastructure to make it better so we can find the bug the next time. But it's really, really complicated. We're also complicating matters quite a lot by, as I mentioned, we support 11 different TLS libraries. That's 11 different binaries you could have. And you can't build all of those on the same platform. So you need like 5 architectures just to test all the TLS libraries. And then we can build with different name resolution backends, 3 of those. You can build on and off with like, I think 7 or 12 other options. So there's literally millions or billions of different build combinations that people are actually using. So it's not actually possible to test everything for us. We're also then sort of hampered a little bit by the small size. I mean, we have to kind of select where we spend our effort. So yeah, I could spend more time on testing, but then I would have to spend less time on something else. So in general, I think we're pretty good. But testing is always like that. You can always just, I mean, you never really end up in a position where you're really, really happy with your testing. At least that's my experience.
Maybe a very stupid question. How do you came up with the name Card?
How did I come up with a name? Good question. It's actually quite simple. It's a, I mean, URL. Is it just a play on the name? Just C URL, as in you can see it. That's how I came up with it. And then I also thought that, yeah, well, C, that could also stand for client, URL client, right? Client for URLs. So it wasn't more complicated than that. And then afterwards, someone else more clever than me came up with, well, it could have been curl URL request library. Yes, yeah, right. That's how I thought about it. Much better. And these days, you know, it's not even URL anymore. It's URI mostly, or IRI. So it's actually kind of outdated, but at least it's short.
If someone would like to start contributing, what would be your advice?
If
someone would like to start contributing to your project, what would be your advice?
How to start contributing? Yeah. I would say that you would join a community. So sort of, and joining the community is just a matter of subscribing to the mailing list, basically. Possibly hang around on IRC, but that's basically dead most of the time. But reading mailing list, just get a sense for what's happening. Maybe reading the to-do list or known bug lists. Or the even better case is if you have something that you think is wrong or bad or missing. You have an idea, I would like to have this. So hang around a while, read up on just, we have documentation how to contribute, what to do that, and how to do things. And just read up on that and then try it out. We're also, as I just mentioned, we're on GitHub, so we also accept pull requests or whatever if you want to do that, the kind of the new style of doing things. So since we're C project, we wrote everything in old style C89 code. That's like, you know, the oldest possible thing, most traditional and conservative you can get, basically. We don't even allow // comments. So that's a bit of a bar for some. You have to kind of accept that. So there might be some style issues or syntax issues that you'd have to just adapt to and everything. But I don't think it's, if you get behind that, if you're just comfortable with that, it's not hard to contribute. As I said, it's not a lot of code. It's not complicated. We don't have any massive layers of indirections. It's just plain old C code. No?
You mentioned that you get a lot of... Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned that you get a lot of bug reports. Do you have like a favorite weird, like really weird bug report you receive?
Weird bug reports. Yes, but I would say that my weirdest ones are not the ones that are about curl at all. You know, since I get all these questions about, they find my email address, so I get all sorts of crazy reports. Just this week, I got a nice. I don't know that it's about curl even. I got this question. I at least got it twice this week. My program doesn't work. Written on my iPad. And I get a lot of those, and I got a lot of this. I got this. I think it was like last year or so. The subject, NFS World, and then it says, "I've been kicked out. Can you please help me?" Is this some sort of spam? And then, to me, you know, I'm an old Unix guy. NFS, that's a file system over network, right? It's not. Need for Speed World. Oh, that's a game, right? So it turns out they're actually using libcurl in Need for Speed. So I guess they found my name, but so I get a lot of those, and I think they're all really funny, and they actually, if I may be even more kind of, without picking on individuals, it gets even more funny when they can't speak English. So you get those in funny languages, or just, you know, really, you can really get the sense that this guy, he didn't even know how to phrase this question, but he really made an effort. And then you can barely understand what they're saying. I have no idea what they're talking about. You know, a program I've never seen might use my code. He's asking about the GPS. I don't know. So yeah, great fun. But I don't have any, I mean, I don't have any particular ones that, since I think that since when they're actually accurate, when they're actually talking about curl code, I mean, that's not fun. I mean, that's not funny anymore. Then they're just accurate and just, yeah. I do a lot of stupid things. So of course I have a lot of stupid bugs, but I try to fix those.
So if you started over today and you didn't have this, what would you think that you would take on that would be the biggest need right now?
The biggest need right now.
Computer-wise, not necessarily starving people, that's a bigger need. Put in context.
The biggest need, yeah. I'm not the grand visionary, so I'm not the one to actually say what is the big thing, what is missing. No, if I wouldn't spend too much time on this, I would spend something. I mean, I'm a networking guy. I work on network stuff. I would work on network-related things. So if I wouldn't spend a lot of time on curl, I would spend a lot of time on something else in this area, because this is what I think is so much fun. So I would work on other protocol-related things. I don't work on big things. I work on kind of sending bytes over the wire, back and forth as fast as possible. So I would work on things like, you know, the quick protocol from Google. That's an interesting, fun challenge going forward. I would be part of that more, or I would work on other networking things that I've also kind of. I do a lot of. I actually maintain several other open source projects too. And since I kind of spend this much time on curl, I always leave the others behind. So I always have kind of a guilty conscience because I have these others that I really can't maintain, but they're still asking questions, sending bug reports. So yeah, the easy answer would be that, yeah, I would spend more time on those, maybe, or find another one. There's always more to do. There's always more projects and more fun.
Will there ever be any support for server-side?
Server-side support? No, really, no. I can add a lot of stuff, but no. So I can't change the name, you know. That's C. No. Conservative, yeah. That's kind of inferred from me. No, but no, server-side that's a completely different story. So I think server-side is first, it's a completely different problem, I think. And server-side, there's a lot of really complicated and advanced and very solid solutions already. I don't see a big gap there for anyone to just. I mean, these days there are a lot of good brains working on the server-side problems already, and they already provide really good solutions. So I don't see any need for a server-side thing like her.
For HTTP, there's not so much.
For HTTP.
Yeah.
You mean a library for server-side HTTP?
Exactly.
Well, I would possibly first start out with question the premise that you need a library for server-side HTTP. But there are ones. I don't know if they're good at all, but I know that they exist. Since that's sort of not my... I'm looking in my little corner here. I'm client-side.
So how did the HTTP2 development go on?
HTTP, the server-side. HTTP2 server-side, HTTP2 both sides, actually. So, since this is a sort of a parenthesis, since it's not really about curl, but HTTP2 is really not server. When you talk about the HTTP2 is mostly a new framing layer. So it's about the sending stuff and then kind of translating the headers into the new framing. And that's basically the same thing from both directions. So you don't really have to do much difference from a server side and a client side. So what you do is, as initially, you just write a translation layer, HTTP 1.122 and back. And then you can basically front both sides with that. So it was actually, there's a Japanese guy who's writing the ng HTTP2 library. And that's the library we're using with curl when we do HTTP2. And he was also really early on in providing that same thing for server side. So his server was, he had a server before I had a client. So we kind of, he wrote both ends, and we just followed along. He did all the hard parts, I did the easy parts. So that was it.
Do you have any comments on interplanetary source of like protocols for internet?
Interplanetary internet. Yeah, I have a comment about that. I think in general, I think that's first, it's a good question. I think in general, we're looking into protocol space going forward. In that we're going to do more. I think, is my thinking hat on. I think we're going to see more dedicated special purpose protocol implementations. Like HTTP2, I think, is the first step in that. As in, we're conflating layers, transport and everything, all these layers we tend to learn in school and everything. They're going merged, and we're piling things on top to make things go faster. Like HTTP2 is that, Quick is that. Is a really a way of putting everything into one and blurring the boundaries of everything and make it really fast for one specific purpose. And I think in the other direction, that when we're not focusing on making everything as fast as possible for the web on this planet, because that's where we're going with HTTP2 and Quick and all those efforts, they're really on like maximizing your hundreds of milliseconds down to tens of milliseconds or even below that. Talking in the other end, I don't think we're looking at the same problem. So I think we could possibly look at completely different solutions too. Since going interplanetary there, that's a completely different problem space, really. So I think what we're working on today is minimizing latency on really making everything go faster on this planet. So I think it's another, we're not working on the same, we're not in the same team. So I don't know. Long answer to, I don't know.
Back to HTTP2 now. Do you think that it turned out to be a good next version of HTTP?
Do I think HTTP2 is good? Yeah. Or it's a good next version?
Yeah. Compromises as always, but personally, did it end up well?
Personally, I think it ended up really well. Again, I'm a client-side guy. I would say that HTTP2 is really good for client-side. I know that if you're asking people in the other end, like intermediaries or server side, they're not as happy. But I would say that HTTP2 is really, I don't think anyone was really completely thrilled and happy with all the details. But I don't think that anyone was also completely miserable. So I think it's a great next step for HTTP. So I think it's gonna be a much better web with HTTP2 going forward. It's going to be notable before next year. So yes, I think it's good. It's not the end. It's not. I mean, we're not going to stop there. It's not going to be. We're not done with HTTP now. It's not going to be another 16 years. So no, but we're going to keep evolving from this point. But it's good this far.
Do you think it's possible to maybe for the last since HTTP 1.1? All iteration, adding different vendors, adding stuff. Do you think it's actually possible to? Okay, we'll have a new major version, then we have this. And it won't change anything.
If it's possible to add anything.
No, I mean if that way of working actually can be adopted. It seems like between 1.1 and 2, it's been like different vendors adding like their proprietary stuff, and then others have to follow on.
No. The evolution and development of protocols, like from 1.1 to 2, I think we did the easy way out with 2. We didn't really take into all that account since we're still kind of bearing the same things through as we did with 1.1. So all your funny things basically can still live in HTTP2. So we didn't put a stop to that. We kind of just transferring that through. So yeah, this far we can certainly handle that, and I think that's why we are seeing HTTP2 being adopted this good and this fast, because you can just put a HTTP2 in front of the HTTP1 and most everything is going to keep on working. But of course that has to end at some points, because you can't really develop things if you have to keep dragging everything old with you. You have to kind of make a cut somewhere. So yeah, that is a challenge. But I think again, I think we're looking at different use cases. I think if you're looking at the use case browsers, desktop and mobile browsers, I certainly think that we can cut the tail at some point. And I think that the recent years have shown that browsers are really, really up to date now. Browsers are actually making things easier for users to make websites and everything that Robert knows much more than me about. But I think in general, that's a trend. So I think that will go even for transport protocols in that area. There's also another area where you're using HTTP, like in the current case, we're not doing browsers. We're using much more programmatic applications. And that is perhaps not as adaptive and not as fast. So that'll take longer. Maybe that'll be another use case. Maybe they will stay on HTTP 1.1 forever. I don't know. As always with protocols, you don't really have to. I mean, don't have to delete anything. It's there. It's been tested. It's proven in use. We're using it today. If it's fine, don't break it. Just use it. Continue. As in curl, we don't remove protocols, right? We put them back. No, but I mean, so it could still be there for a very long time.
My gratitude and for the audience that you have made a sustainable contribution towards the technology that was there like 2 decades back, which was very fragile, but you made a contribution which is very sustainable in technology, the world where people are using it as a source. So we thank you for that. And if you have any suggestions for the next generation technologies that everyone is competing with at Stenberg, from the Google side, the Apple and everything, that you wish that it should be followed based on the 2 decades of experience and learning lessons learned which you have learned, a contribution to the society?
I think that society has changed quite a lot, and society, and by society I don't mean the entire society. I mean just technology-wise and kind of internet-wise where we are. I think it has changed a lot since 1990. 1998 was actually the year when Netscape announced that they would do an open source browser. The same is actually just a couple of months before I released curl the first time. And before that there was nothing open source on the web. It was crazy, right? So I think that that's just a sign of how much have changed. So I think just open source, just internet, everything. There's been so much change. Going forward 18 years, everything will change. I'm quite certain of that, and I really cannot see I can hardly see what happens in the curl project the next 3 months. I can't tell what's happening in a year. I have no idea, really not. I'm just following along. This is my passion. I like this. And I hope that if we're just enough number of people who are just interested and just trying out things, being kind of sharing with each other, trying out, working, experimenting, we're going there. That's what we'll do.
Which protocol is evolving the most right now? I mean, the last year or something.
Sorry, which protocol?
Protocol is evolving the most.
Evolving the most, yeah, that's HTTP. As a second, I would. There's no second, there's no third, and there's no fourth. But if it would be something else, it would be the other protocols. They are evolving, but they're not used as much by my users, so we're not giving that much focus. But a lot of the protocols are. Like the last couple of years have shown a very strong focus on making everything over TLS. So all protocols have gotten updated RFCs for doing things over TLS. So they're all kind of straightening up things, how to do things over TLS, and they're all adding authentication methods. They're all adding things. So if you wanted to look at one of these protocols and you were interested in just SMTP and you would just look at that, you would see 10 different RFCs just the last 3 years. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff. But my users, they're really, the majority are HTTP users. So we're having kind of a overweight into the HTTP stuff. And we're working on then, of course, details over HTTP, like everything over TLS. So we have like proxies over TLS. You can have TLS over TLS and all sorts of weird stuff. So we're doing, most of it is basically HTTP. Anything else?
First, thank you. So I thought it was actually named after your daughters, or sorry, children, as Monty named MySQL and MariaSQL after his children. And then I figured, what are your kids called?
Yeah, they're called.
So, but no.
I have to think about that for a while to get to make that.
Yeah, I do like to use old style C. Like I thought JavaScript and Douglas Crockford was strict, but you know, it's a different world.
It's a different world.
But
I got left behind. You know, nobody told me that.
Yeah, you missed the email. So what's the weirdest pronunciation of the term? Like, you know, people say MySQL and stuff like that. What?
Yeah, yeah. I've had this discussion with people that how do you pronounce lib as in libcurl? As in library is called library when this begins with lib. Is it libcurl then, or is it libcurl? To me, it's a liberty or whatever. So I say libcurl, but I've had this discussion. But in general, people tend to call it curl or Searle or something like that.
So maybe it's actually an honor, like Searle.
Sir L, right? Yeah. So it's actually quite easy to pronounce, I think, since it's actually also kind of an English word. I mean,
right.
Curl or curly. So it's.
I mean, they named the cat after your thing.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Of course. Right.
So it's not too shabby.
I'm waiting for the Swedish curl.
Well, I mean, we have Fika script as a replacement for CoffeeScript. So
right.